Exporting and importing data. Hello everybody, this is Ben Finkel, and in this nugget we're going to take a look at how you can, in a bulk fashion, get data exported out of or imported into your Google Cloud SQL databases. Using tools like the MySQL Workbench or the client API libraries inside of programming languages, you can get data in and out of your Cloud SQL databases just like you would get it in and out of any other database. But that's really for production work. That's for your applications to do, to move the data in and out. Sometimes you're going to want to move databases wholesale in and out of Google Cloud SQL. Imagine promoting a development database up into a production environment, or making a read-only copy for reporting purposes of an existing Google Cloud SQL database. You don't want to select every table and insert all that data into a new database. You just want to export the database and then re-import it. Google Cloud SQL exposes this functionality through something called MySQL dump files, which is exactly what it sounds like. It's a dump of the database down to the file system. Now, in order to use this inside of Google Cloud SQL, you've also got to set up a Google Cloud Storage bucket in order to save this data into. The basic process is you export the MySQL dump file down into a Google Cloud Storage bucket. If you want to, you can give it a .gz extension that'll compress the file. This is good if you're dealing with a large database. That's going to help keep your Google Cloud Storage costs down, because you will have to pay for this. And then you can copy it from Google Cloud Storage down to your local desktop, or really anywhere else you need it once it's in Google Cloud Storage. So Cloud Storage here is operating as the file system where you can store these files, because of course Cloud SQL doesn't have a file system available to you. There's no root drives, there's no persistent disks in it. That's the operation, that's what Google Cloud Storage is going to do. You would do this process, you would use this to bring the copy of the database, like we said, into a new environment or a new instance. But no, this would not be used for a routine backup process. You might back up the database from Google Cloud SQL into your own fixed storage, but that wouldn't be your routine normal backup and restore process. There's something else for that, and we're going to talk about that in a few minutes. Restoring from these MySQL dump files is the exact same process. You copy them up to a Google Cloud Storage bucket, and then you import them into your Google Cloud SQL instance. And again, note that if you want to, you can .gz the file to save some space, and you can import a .gz file into your Google Cloud SQL instance, and it will unzip it before it tries to import it. It will recognize that it's a compressed file. Now, like I said, this is going to require Google Cloud Storage to be set up, so you have to create a bucket, and you have to make sure that you have read-write access to that bucket. You're probably an administrator on this project, so that won't be an issue, but something to keep in mind. And of course, the files that sit here on Google Cloud Storage are going to accrue Google Cloud Storage costs. The pricing is fairly simple and incredibly cheap, but here's a little document you can link to, and you can check out what the pricing is for Google Cloud Storage. But just keep that in mind as you create exports or upload imports into Google Cloud Storage. That does have a small cost associated with it. Of course, executing these imports and exports is a very easy thing to do. If you want to use the Developers Console, the web user interface, all you need to do is navigate up to your instance, choose the Export option off the top of the instance dashboard, or the Import option. They're both essentially the same, and you'll get a little dialog box here. And all you need to do is indicate the cloud storage path that you want to write that export out to. And notice if you include the .gz extension on that file name in that cloud storage path, it will automatically gzip it up for you. It recognizes that. You can also click Show Advanced Options, and the only advanced option that you're going to see is databases to export. Here you can limit it to a single database or a single schema within your instance to export, or you can export all databases simply by leaving that blank, which it is by default. So by default, you just give it a file name, and it writes out your export to your Google Cloud SQL bucket, which you can see once it's written out that export by just navigating down to your buckets, your storage under Google Cloud Storage. You can see both the export file as well as a log indicating how well that export ran. Of course, you can also do this from the command line interface as well, the Cloud SDK. To export the database, you simply call gcloud SQL instances export. That's your action. Specify the instance name, the bucket. If you want to, you can specify the database, and a nice option from the Cloud SDK command line is if you specify a database, you can also specify specific tables within that database to export. So you can get a little more granular with your exports if you're using the command line interface. Those options are not available over in the Developers Console. You can also import with gcloud SQL instances import. And you can view your bucket using something called the GSUtil. This is installed with the Google Cloud SDK. Slightly different utility. GSUtil ls, and then you pass in your URI for your Google Cloud Storage bucket, gs:// the name of your bucket, that's the URI. That'll list all of the contents, all the files that are inside of a bucket, similar to what we did right over here in the UI. Now the other side of this coin is backups and recoveries. You don't want to just import and export data from your database. You want to have a nice, sound, routine backup strategy so that you can recover from any kind of disaster or loss of data or corruption of data that might occur inside of your database. Thankfully, Google makes this very easy by handling the legwork for you. Google Cloud SQL will actually perform daily backups for you for every single one of your instances. And those backups don't even cost any money. It writes them right out from your SQL database down into a little backup storage place, and it will store 7 copies of your database, so the last 7 days roughly of your backups. In order for this to work, though, you have to make sure that backups are enabled on your instance, and they're not necessarily by default. You got to enable those backups and set your backup window. The backup window is the time when it's going to try to make the backups happen. You can't force a backup to happen on demand. You simply set your window, and Google Cloud SQL will try to get a backup during that window. When it's actually performing the backup, reads are completely unaffected. The database stays online, it's not brought down, and people can select or query your database without any problems, but there is a temporary lock on writes to that database while it gets a snapshot that is performing the backup of. And then lastly, if you want to use point-in-time recovery, you need to enable an option called binary logging. But what's nice about this is Google Cloud SQL, again, will write out these backups. It won't charge you for these backups. It'll keep 7 copies of them for you. And they're there whenever you need to perform a recovery from them. Recovery is very easy as well. Those are triggered by you, the user, so it's not an automated process, obviously, when you need to recover. You can do it, of course, from the web UI or the command line interface. Backup recoveries restore to the same instance that they came from. So you're making your recoveries from a backup into an instance. But if you do a point-in-time recovery, you're actually getting a new instance. So point-in-time recoveries come up to a new cloned instance, and it copies these settings here. The tier, the package, the location, the backup window, the replication settings, binary logging, authenticated networks, Google App Engine authentications, and SSL settings. So recoveries from a normal backup come right back to the original instance, but recoveries from a point-in-time backup come to a copy of your Cloud SQL instance. Performing these operations is very easy to do. From the web UI, all you have to do is go into your instance, click the Edit button, scroll down to the Backups section, and here you can enable and disable backups as well as choose the backup window that you wanted to try to recover during. You can see your backups on the main dashboard. They're listed right there in the main dashboard of your instance. It tells you the time that it actually ran at, and it gives you a little link you can click Restore that will restore that backup to your instance. If you want to use the command line interface, well, you can do that. A lot of different options from there. You can set your backup start time either during creation or on an existing instance simply using this -- backup start time command. You got to pass in the hours and minutes for the start window, 1 p.m., 2 p.m., etc., making sure to use military time, so it's 24-hour clock. If you want to turn off those backups, you just pass in the -- no backup switch on a Google G-Cloud SQL instances patch command. If you want to see the available backups, they're easy enough to list. You simply call the backups resource, passing in the instance and the list option. So it's not G-Cloud SQL instances, it's G-Cloud SQL backups. They're their own separate resource from the perspective of G-Cloud SQL. And then lastly, if you want to restore a backup from one of those backups instances, you simply call the restore backup command, pass in the instance name, and also something called the due time. You'll notice it's a big, long, complex string. Well, you get that from this list up here. You'll see the exact string that you should use in that list. You can pass into the due time command, and that's how you restore a specific backup into your instance. That concludes this nugget on exporting and importing data in Google Cloud SQL. We took a look at how you can export MySQL dump files out of your database down into Google Cloud Storage, as well as importing up from Google Cloud Storage into your database. And we talked about the fact that you can use a backup and recovery option built into Google Cloud SQL to get routine backed up copies of your database made every single day. I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.